We're back with the Twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Van Sanson. We're live and we're going to be talking Encino's win in the Lexington Stakes, other Grade 1 action from the weekend, and more things that caught our eye. So you can see that we're live because there's some kind of interference. But let's jump right in, James, and start with Saturday's Lexington Stakes, a Grade 3 event that Brad Cox runner Encino won. And that was the final Kentucky Derby prep race. He now is in the 20-horse field with the defection that happened this weekend. So how do you rate his chances in the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I think Encino will be up against it from like a win perspective. I do think we have a quality of a top-heavy field lining up for this year's Derby, at least some star quality at the top. But and I just don't think Encino right now at this point in his career is fast enough to defeat top-class rivals going a mile and a quarter on May 4th. But he is rapidly progressing for Brad Cox. Encino is. And I think he definitely deserves consideration for like any vertical exotic wagers like trifectas or superfectas, in the Derby itself. And one thing about Encino, I really like the versatility he's displayed. He's won 3 straight races right now for Brad Cox. We'll watch on Saturday's Lexington. I thought, like most people, that the wine steward would be going to the lead from his inside post. But Encino beat him and everybody else to the front in this race and showed good speed. And like I said, he's won 2 of his last 3 starts like in gate-to-wire fashion, like he did this Lexington Stakes. But in the John Battaglia Memorial, he found himself off the pace and really showed good courage to get up and win that race going away by a length. So, he's got the versatility with run style. And I also like the fact that in this Lexington Stakes, you'll see the wine steward come up to him, offer a real serious challenge at the top of the stretch. And I thought it was very encouraging to see Encino essentially have another gear left when he gets challenged right now by the wine steward on the outside. He has more in reserve. Laurent Giroux does. And he winds up winning going away by about a length. Now, he'll lose his jockey in the Kentucky Derby. Laurent Giroux is the regular rider on Just the Touch, the Bluegrass runner-up, and he'll stick with that colt in the Derby. But Encino is moving forward right now, and he's the type of colt that deserves a shot in the Kentucky Derby because I do think if he keeps moving forward, he's got a chance to hit the board, Vance.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of the same points I was going to. On the bare form, Encino is probably a horse I'd use underneath in vertical exotics rather than consider as a win contender. With that said, I appreciate his versatility as you brought up. And even though he hasn't raced beyond a mile and a 16th, his pedigree is excellent for a mile and a quarter. He's by Derby winner Nyquist. He's out of a mare by Bernardini. And his dam is actually a half-sister to 2007 Derby winner Street Sense. So a lot of pedigree power, as you would expect from a Godolphin homebred. And in a year when only Fierceness has really stuck out on speed ratings and very inconsistently at that, I think, and there's perhaps not much separating an improving colt like Encino as much in that regard from some of the others that are likely to take a lot more money. One final point I would make, it's not set in stone yet that he's going to run in the Derby. I know right after the Lexington, Brad Cox said he was going to talk with Sheikh Mohammed, and they'll decide whether they'll go for the Derby or maybe wait an extra 2 weeks and point for the Preakness. But I thought it would be kind of ironic that if Godolphin were to win the Kentucky Derby for the very first time, this is a race that has been eluded them for years. It would be ironic if they won their first Derby with a horse that was not really considered one of the top flight contenders, Ashley.
We all took all the points I had too with the pedigree, the speed ratings. Encino had a 95 Brisnet speed rating in this race. It was his career best, but compared to Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, they all have triple-digit speed figures. So he would need to improve in the Kentucky Derby. And I do like Catching Freedom a little bit better out of Brad Cox's barn. But I like Encino better than Just a Touch. I think he has a better chance than Just a Touch in the Derby. I just feel like in the Bluegrass, you saw Sierra Leone overtake Just a Touch in the stretch, and I don't see just a touch turning the tables in the Derby, but I could see Encino potentially something happening there, especially because of his versatility. And I like, as you mentioned, James, the way he held off the challenge from the Wine Steward in the stretch. That showed a lot of maturity as well. Well, since that's really all I have to say, because you all covered everything, let's move over to the 3 Grade 1 races from this weekend. So, Vance, what stood out to you from the Grade 1 action?
Well, I have to give props to one of my favorite horses at present, Master of the Seas, for his excellent season debut in Friday's Maker's Mark Mile at Keeneland. There were some concerns that the slower ground would cause some difficulty, but it really proved no hindrance whatsoever. After the race, Charlie Appleby, his trainer, revealed that rather than being shipped back to Britain, Master of the Seas would stay in the U.S. With the intent of campaigning here all season in advance of his title defense in the Breeders' Cup Mile at Del Mar. And I think that's great news. It infuses a lot of excitement into the older male turf division in this country. He said Appleby also said that his next race is probably going to be the Turf Classic on Kentucky Derby Day at Churchill Downs. And so that looks like a mouth-watering showdown between Master of the Seas and the Chad Brown-trained I'm Very Busy, who won the Pegasus World Cup Turf and the Munoz Memorial earlier this year. So U.S. Turf, if that showdown does come to fruition, U.S. turf racing simply doesn't get better than that these days.
Yeah, that will be an exciting matchup. And I loved how Master of the Seas like altered course. The jock was down on the inside. It looked like he was going to try to angle him out about 3 paths, like outside of 2 horses. And then he angled him back down to the inside and he exploded to win going away. A very impressive comeback performance from the Breeders' Cup Mile winner. I'll mention the Grade 1 Apple Blossom. Apple Blossom took place at Oaklawn Park on Saturday, and Adair Manor rebounded stylishly from a surprise loss, upset loss in the Beholder Mile in March. And she did so in this race by just flashing speed right out of the gate. We'll see her basically take the lead here into the first turn. And from this point on, she was just gone. She opened up her advantage at every pole, winning by nearly 6 lengths. And she's a really classy mare for Bob Baffert. Adair Manor is. She's now won 4 straight stakes races at a mile and a 16th distance. And I would like to see her go to New York this summer and run in some big Grade 1 races for distaffers there instead of just staying in California and essentially beating up on overmatched rivals in their stakes. But I will say that she did only get a 98% speed rating, and she can only beat the horses that showed up. But her 2 main rivals did not show up at all. They were completely flat. Wet Paint was the second choice. Tax was the third choice. They were both late runners. They both got solid pace. I mean, 23 and 0.68, 46.95. That was a good pace to close in. I mean, they could have closed for second at the very least, but they were 6th and 7th, made no impact whatsoever. And I really don't think with those 2 not firing, Adair Manor, didn't beat that strong a group. One thing that's a little bit of a shame about the Apple Blossom now, it used to be run in early April, which would give fillies and mares an opportunity to run in the Apple Blossom and then the Grade 1 La Troyenne on the Kentucky Oaks undercard. With the races being so close nowadays, that isn't an option. And I do think that the La Troyenne on May 3rd is going to come up a lot tougher than Saturday's Apple Blossom field did. The La Troyenne is going to have champion older female Idiomatic returning. Last year's champion 3-year-old filly and Kentucky Oaks winner Pretty Mischievous is going to be in the La Troyenne. We're going to get this up-and-coming filly Tiny Temper for Dallas Stewart off of a win in the Azeri. And it's going to be the seasonal debut for Zygira, who concluded last year with just romping, I thought, big-time wins in the Grade 3 Fall City and the Grade 2 Mother Goose. So I just think that's going to be an epic showdown with the exception of Adair Manor, pretty much all the top fillies and mares in dirt. And I'm excited to see the La Troyenne, Ashley.
So I'll talk about the final Grade 1 race, the Jenny Wiley at Keeneland, and Butte de Cachet won as a 25-1 long shot. Now, I was kicking myself for overlooking this horse, but I mean, can you really blame me? She was 25-1 at post time, and she had Frankie Dettori, so that should have been my clue that maybe something big was going to happen with this race. She went right to the front, which is unlike her in her past race history. She was the longest shot of Chad Brown's four runners in the field. I had Didia and English Rose, who came in second and third, but unfortunately, it just wasn't my day. I did get that payout, the 405 payout at Keeneland, so I'm glad for that. But yeah, if you had Buta Cachet in this race and you played the pick five, $5,000 to the winner of that pick five. So definitely exciting race there. But man, those always hurt when you lose with those big long shots. And that happens at Keeneland. But yeah, very good runner. Didn't have a group or graded stakes win yet, but now a grade one victory. So congrats to Frankie Dettori as well. He had 6 straight wins at Santa Anita last week and then came over to Keeneland and absolutely dominated as well.
You can't be kicking yourself though, because I mean, you mentioned that $5,000 pick five. To me, you were either just throwing every Chad Brown horse in, or using all. I think she might have been 35 or 40 to one if she wasn't trained by Chad Brown. That brought her price down a little bit. So, really, just a savvy ride to get clear like he did, Frankie, and that was the key for Boot Cachet to essentially wake up and run the race of her life on Saturday.
She did have a pretty good third in the matriarch, but she finished third to 2 stablemates that were in the Jenny Wiley. So another reason I kind of wrote her off, because I thought, if they beat her last out, they'll probably beat her as well in the 1-1 16th mile event, because they also had, some experience at that distance as well. So you live and you learn, and hopefully I'll get a pick 5 before the meet's over. Well, James, what else caught your eye from the weekend?
Well, I'm going to mention Forever Young arrived at Churchill Downs over the weekend. He made his really first appearance over the track on Sunday. I think came out late after clearing quarantine. And then on Monday morning, he galloped, and he was out there again this morning. And I mean, just watching the videos, people of Churchill Downs and other videos from him out on the track. I mean, I think he's a gorgeous looking animal, carries his head like high with like an air about him that he knows he's really good and really classy. And the thing with Forever Young, I mean, we're at the point now we're going back and researching these horses and their past races, or at least I am. And I watched this race in Japan in December that he won, and the margin of that race is 7. But at one point in mid-stretch, it looked like he was going to win by 10 plus lengths. I really thought it was a smashing performance. I think the Saudi Derby probably, given that most of the U.S. audience hadn't seen him run yet, led people to think he was like a late runner. But he missed the start in that Saudi Derby and just basically overcame a less than favorable trip to run down a real classy runner in Bookham Dano. He's actually more of an early presser. He sat just off the speed Young did in the UAE Derby. He's going to look to do the same in the Kentucky Derby, sit 5th or 6th. I think he's lengths better than Derma Sadigake. I think he's the best horse so much better than the past couple of years of Japanese horses. And I do think he has the potential to really continue to train well, impress observers, and really get bet down. I mean, I've seen some estimates 8 to 1, 10 to 1. I think Forever Young is going to really attract a lot of late support in the build up to the race and bring the price on Fierceness and Sierra Leone up, because all 3 horses are going to be taking money, and you can't have 3 horses like that in a Kentucky Derby field taking serious win money and paying like $7 or $8. I mean, they're all going to be potentially higher than people might think, given the fact that Forever Young has a chance to take a lot of cash come race day Vance.
The horse that caught my eye this weekend was Ready for Sherrill, a first-time starter, 3-year-old filly at Keeneland on Saturday, and she really turned in an eye-catching debut for owner-breeder Charles Fipke and trainer Roger Hatfield. Ready for Sherrill conceded the field at least 10 lengths going into the first turn, steadily made ground throughout, and then wound up winning by 3.5 lengths in a really dominant performance. She was 7 to 1 in this field. So she did take a little bit of cash or a little bit of betting action, I should say, after posting a really nice work tab down in Florida. It remains to be seen whether she'll develop into a graded quality type like the rest of her family, but just for the sake of winning a race, she's increased her broodmare value astronomically. She's got a terrific pedigree. She's by more than ready. She's she's out of the Breeders' Cup winner, Perfect Sherrill, and she's a half sister to the Grade 1 winner, Sherrill Spite, who finished unplaced to Master of the Season, the Maker's Mark Mile on Friday. She's also a granddaughter of Grade 1 winner, Lady Sherrill, who in her own family produced top-level performers Shakespeare and Lady Spitespear, who is a champion in Canada. So this is a filly definitely worth looking for later this spring, perhaps in Canada, where Roger Atfield typically sends his best stock during the summer. Ashley.
And I'm going to take it over to Oaklawn to talk about Skelly's rebound in the Count Fleet handicap. He was the defending champ in this race, and he was coming off a second in the Ride a Dirt Sprint. Before that, he had a 7-win streak, and then he went back to Oaklawn, where he's done really well, now has 7 wins from 9 starts at Oaklawn. He was facing a lot of the same rivals that he has faced at Oaklawn before in other stakes races, including 2 stablemates, Jackson Traveler, and then you had Rivet in the field as well. And after this win, Steve Asmunsen said that Skelly is ready to face tougher competition. He's going to point him toward the Vanderbilt at Saratoga and the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And I'm really excited to see him compete because he keeps posting these triple-digit Bristnet speed figures. He's 2 for 3 this year with that 1 second-place finish at Overseas. And I think he can hang with some of the top sprinters. Right now, I feel like he is kind of arguably the top in the sprint division, but you also have the Chosen Brawn over in California. And of course, there'll be a lot more sprinters making their debut as the season progresses as well. So I think he's got a good shot. I'd love to see him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And I think that, he just continues to improve. He had a meet best time of 108.82 for 6 furlongs in this race that we're watching. So definitely someone to keep an eye out going forward. And I think he's just going to keep winning by several lengths.
Really remarkable. He hadn't run that many times, and last year he ran a slew of times at Oaklawn. He won the Count Fleet, won all these races at Oaklawn last year. He went and ran at Lone Star in a Grade 3 stake, ran well there, and then he was like on the shelf again for like the rest of the year. He's basically run like most of his races at Oaklawn. I mean, he hasn't been able to like continue on the whole rest of the year, but you get back to like December and all of a sudden he's cranked up, ready to go. And I think he's won like 7 times now at Oaklawn Park. So loves that track. I do think that Riyadh Sprint in Saudi Arabia, that was a real top class effort that bodes well for him. Stepping up to face tougher rivals in America. Because let's face it, if the Breeders' Cup Sprint was at Oaklawn Park, he would be odds on right now. He loves that track. But I do think he's become a top-class performer, and I'm excited to see him try tougher competition this summer at Saratoga and other venues.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday with more recaps from the stakes action, and join us on Thursday with the Twinspires jury for our best bets and fades.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence. Whether you use handicapping insights, like our Bristnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can share the thrill with friends using our exclusive BetShare feature.